So this little statement here is probably a good summary of everything we've kind of talked about in a short form. As a matter of fact, when you've looked at these notes, sometimes I've gone in and I've pulled a lot of things that were things I think are interesting, and I put them in longer form. If you want to go back through those, the biggest and best thing is save a pristine version of these notes in your own file someplace, then go back in there and shorten it up to the things you find that are important, like just the things that are dealing with balancing or not, finding the elements or balancing out the masses, like we did in that previous sheet, and just highlight those kinds of things after seeing what kinds of worksheets we've done and just narrow that down to there. Anything you do to reorganize your notes is going to be helpful for you to remember this material, okay? I'm going to move on to this topic we're going to do today, which is called balancing compounds. Now that you've seen how the elements can be represented and how the protons, neutrons, and electrons are sort of related to each other, what I want to do is get you to start to write down what a balanced compound is. Now, the word balanced may help you to think, what are we balancing? It's going to be the charge. You've already seen the metals like to be plus charged. In the right side of the periodic table, the non-metals like to be minus charged. So, when you're going to write down these compounds, you're going to get a sheet with names of elements. And you're going to write down the symbols for them. So the first thing you do is you write down the atomic symbols like you've been doing in the worksheets. Then you're going to always make sure the metal goes first. The metal is always the first name, and the non-metal is always the second. You're going to write down a number that's called a valence number. That valence number is right on the periodic table itself. It's organized because of the way that Mendeleev put the table together. Everything in this first column has got a +1 charge. Remember, he said that has one electron in its outer shell. It likes to share, and when it does give it away, because it's easier to lose one, it becomes +1. Everything in this column becomes what that charge says, +2. Why? Because there's 2 electrons available for sharing. Everything in the middle gets more complicated. We'll deal with later. This third element has got +3 because it has 3 electrons. That element has 4 electrons. Now, this could act as +4 or -4. Nitrogen, because it has 5 electrons, actually it's much easier to grab 3 more electrons to get its outer shell filled, or its available electrons up to 8. Oxygen has 6 electrons. It likes, and everything underneath it, likes to get 8, so it's going to grab 2 more. That's a -2. Fluorine's got 7, and it's just easy to grab 1 from other elements, and that'll become a -1. So the elements have a charge that's typical when they form compounds because of the numbers of electrons they have, but it's a little bit more than just that number of electrons. If you're closer to 8, you want to fill up and get 8. If you're closer to 0, now there's 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, you'll like to dump those electrons and have 0. That's the way these atoms like to get together. So you're going to write that valence number in the upper right. Here's an example, calcium. Okay, let me write it over here so you can see it bigger. First thing you do is write calcium, and then the other element it's reacting with is chlorine, like that, in case you can't see that one when I'm talking. But each of their metals, you go and you look, the metals, or this one here first, you look at its column, it's going to have a +2. That's the second column. That's where calcium is. Everything in that column has +2. Chlorine is in the second to the end, so that's a -1. Now, you want to get to have some numbers here. These are those subscripts we talked about. The last place you haven't seen numbers yet for is the number of atoms you need to balance these compounds out. I don't have a balance between the plus and minus charge right now. So I need to add some more to one of these atoms so you'd have the same amount of minus charges as plus. As a matter of fact, if I put 2 in here, calcium chloride has 2 -1s, and 1 calcium has 1 + 2. That gets the charge to be balanced. 2 chlorines has enough minus charge to balance out 1 calciums. All right, so that's the balancing, and that's how those charges use these subscripts to help you get the number of charges equal. What's actually happening is you're taking this, you want to say, how can I get the least common multiple of the charges, and then figure out what number the subscript needs to be to answer those. So let's try a couple down here, okay? I won't even do transition metals for this first worksheet. I'll leave that for the next worksheet. But sodium is a +1. Sodium is a +1. And nitrogen, if you look on the periodic table, is a -3. So how many sodiums do I need to balance out that nitrogen? I've got 3 on this side. How many of these? I'm going to need 1, 2, 3 different sodiums to get that same amount of charge. So I'm going to need the 3 here. Sodium 3, nitrogen 1. I don't write 1s because they're understood. Okay, I look up aluminum. That's a +3, but oxygen's a -2. That's their column. So when I try to think, I can't take 2 oxygens, that gives me -4. That doesn't balance this out. So what I'm looking for is the least common multiple, and that's going to be 6. If I get 6 minus charges and 6 plus charges, that would work. So if I get 6 minus charges, I need 3 minus 2s. 3 oxygens gives me 2, 4, 6 charge, right? Then I can get my aluminum to have 6, but they come in 3s. So if I take 2 of those 3s, I'm going to get that 6 plus charge and 6 minus charge. That's the balancing act. Okay? So 2 aluminums and 3 oxygens. Calcium's plus 2, but the oxygen's a minus 2, so I don't have to do anything there. They're balanced. They're happy. And then I'll get to iron later. Don't worry about that one as an example. Okay? So go ahead and let's work on your worksheet and see how you do on those.